There is a fly in your kitchen that you have been trying to kill for the last 20 minutes. It has landed on your counter, moved to the window, circled the light fitting, and settled somewhere you cannot quite reach. And every time you have gotten close enough to do something about it, it has lifted off with that particular combination of speed and randomness that makes a housefly one of the most frustrating creatures a human being can share a room with. Your instinct about this fly is clear and consistent. It is dirty, it is a disease vector, it needs to go, and the fact that it keeps escaping is a personal insult layered on top of a hygiene problem. Before you land the next swat, I want you to hold still for a moment, because almost everything you think you know about the fly in your kitchen is either wrong or so incomplete that it might as well be wrong. And what this animal is actually doing in your home right now is considerably more interesting than anything your instinct is telling you. Today, we are going to look at that fly properly. We are going to find out what it is actually doing when it lands on your counter, why it keeps landing on the same spots, what is happening in its body during those brief moments of stillness, and why entomologists and ecologists who study this family of insects describe the common housefly as one of the most sophisticated biological machines that has ever shared living space with human beings. By the end, I think your instinct will not have disappeared, but it will have a great deal more information to work with than it did before. Let us start with what the fly is doing when it lands. This is the moment that triggers the strongest disgust response in almost everyone, the moment of contact between the fly and a surface you care about, and it is also the moment that is most completely misunderstood. When a housefly lands on your kitchen counter, it is not resting. It is not simply pausing between one destination and another. It is eating, or, more precisely, it is tasting. And the reason it is tasting with its feet, rather than with anything you would recognize as a mouth, is one of the most genuinely astonishing facts in insect biology. The housefly has taste receptors on the pads of its feet. Chemoreceptors so sensitive that they can detect sugar concentrations at levels approximately 10 million times lower than the threshold at which a human tongue can register sweetness. Every surface the fly lands on is being chemically sampled in real time. Your kitchen counter is not a resting place. It is a menu. When the fly finds something chemically interesting, it begins the process of feeding, and this is where the biology gets strange. The housefly has no teeth, no chewing mouthparts, nothing that could process solid food in the way your digestive system requires solid food to be processed before absorption. What it has instead is a proboscis, a fleshy, retractable feeding tube, and a digestive strategy that involves bringing the digestion outside the body before the food enters it. The fly extends its proboscis onto the food surface and secretes saliva-containing digestive enzymes directly onto whatever it is consuming. It then waits a brief moment while those enzymes begin breaking down the food externally, converting solid or semi-solid material into a liquid it can then draw back up through the proboscis. Every time a fly feeds on a surface, it is partially digesting that surface first. And because it is a small animal with a high metabolic rate and a very limited gut capacity, it frequently needs to make room for new intake, which it does by regurgitating partially digested material from a previous meal onto the current feeding surface before drawing it back up again. This is what fly researchers mean when they discuss the potential for contamination, and it is considerably more specific and more interesting than the vague idea of dirtiness that most people carry around. But here is the thing that the disgust response tends to prevent most people from getting to: the part that changes the calculation in ways that matter. The fly doing this in your kitchen did not choose your kitchen because it is especially dirty or because your standards of cleanliness are lacking. It chose your kitchen because your kitchen is warm, reasonably humid, and contains, from the fly's perspective, an extraordinary concentration of chemical signals that register as food. The ripe fruit on your counter, the residue on the inside of a wine glass, the moisture around the sink, the barely visible traces of cooking oils on the surface beside your hob. From a fly's sensory position, A well-maintained domestic kitchen is one of the richest foraging environments it has ever encountered. Your cleanliness is irrelevant to the fly's decision. The chemistry is everything. Now here is the part that will matter most to you as someone who actually uses the space the fly is visiting. What is the fly actually transferring when it lands on your food or your counter? And how does that compare to what you have probably been told? The honest answer requires some precision, because the gap between the theoretical risk and the realistic risk is considerably larger than most people appreciate. A housefly can carry pathogens on its body, on its feet, and in its gut. This is true and well documented, and it is the factual basis for the contamination concern. But the actual transfer of pathogen in quantities sufficient to cause illness depends on a set of conditions that are not always present in a domestic kitchen. Researchers studying fly-borne pathogen transmission have consistently found that the risk is meaningful and real in environments where there is direct, proximate access to human or animal waste, to uncovered food at scale, and to compromised hygiene at the source rather than the destination. In a typical domestic kitchen where the fly entered through an open window on a summer afternoon, the risk from a single brief landing on a prepared food surface is small, context-dependent, and almost always overstated relative to the precautions most people take in response to it. Let that settle for a moment. This does not mean the fly is harmless. It means that what the fly is actually doing and the actual level of risk it represents in your specific environment is considerably more nuanced than the reflexive SWAT suggests. There is something else the fly is doing that almost nobody in a domestic kitchen ever thinks about, and understanding it changes the fly's status from pure pest to something more ambiguous and more accurate. The housefly is a decomposer. Outside the kitchen, in the environment where it belongs, it is doing work that is so fundamental to the function of terrestrial ecosystems that without it, the systems would simply stop working in the way they currently do. The larvae of Musca domestica, the common housefly, develop almost exclusively in decaying organic matter, and in doing so, they perform a function that no other organism performs at quite the same speed or scale. They convert dead biological material, animal waste, rotting plant matter, the accumulated organic residue of living things, into a form that soil organisms can process, that plants can eventually use, and that does not pile up to a depth that would make terrestrial life, as we know it, impossible. A single fly laying eggs on a piece of decaying matter will produce larvae that can reduce the mass of that material by a significant percentage within 48 hours. The speed and efficiency of that decomposition is extraordinary by almost any biological standard. The fly in your kitchen did not arrive from a decomposition site. It almost certainly arrived through an open window or door, drawn by the chemical signals of food in preparation or the warmth of the kitchen environment. But understanding that this is what the fly is built to do, that its biology is oriented entirely around finding, processing, and decomposing organic material at extraordinary speed, explains everything about its behavior in your kitchen that previously seemed like random, pointless irritation. The repeated landings, the interest in specific surfaces and not others, the attraction to the window when it cannot find food. Every behavior you find maddening has a specific biological logic that the fly is executing with precision. The eyes are part of that precision, and they deserve more than a passing mention, because they represent one of the most extreme adaptations in the insect world. A housefly's compound eyes cover the majority of its head surface, giving it a visual field of approximately 330 degrees without any head movement. Each eye is composed of between 3,000 and 4,000 individual ommatidia, each one a complete optical unit sampling a slightly different angle of the surrounding environment and feeding that information into a neural processing system that updates at a frame rate significantly faster than the human visual system. The reason you cannot swat a housefly with any reliability is not that your reflexes are slow by human standards. It is that the fly's visual system is operating on a completely different timescale, detecting your approaching hand, processing the threat, and initiating an escape response in a window of time that is physically too small for your motor system to close. Researchers studying fly escape responses have found that the fly begins repositioning its legs into a launch-ready stance within approximately 100 milliseconds of detecting a looming threat, before the wing muscles have even begun activation. The escape is not a reaction, it is an anticipation. So what should you actually do about the fly in your kitchen? The answer is more practical and more effective than a 20-minute pursuit with a rolled-up magazine. Cover any prepared food or food in preparation that you do not want visited. Keep the fruit bowl in a covered container or the refrigerator during the summer months when fly pressure is highest. If a fly is in the room and you want it out, open the largest available window and close the door to the rest of the house. Flies navigate by light and warmth, and an open window with daylight beyond it will draw any fly in a domestic interior toward it reliably within a few minutes without any pursuit required. A fly screen on the kitchen window during the summer months eliminates almost all of the incidental entry that produces the situation you are currently dealing with. What you should not do is spend significant energy or anxiety on the theoretical contamination risk from a fly that has briefly landed on your kitchen counter, while simultaneously ignoring the far more statistically significant contamination risks present in the same kitchen from the same meal preparation surfaces, from inadequate hand washing, from cross-contamination between raw and cooked ingredients, all of which represent documented transmission routes for the pathogens you are actually concerned about. The fly on your counter is a real consideration, but it is one consideration in a kitchen full of them, and calibrating your response to it, proportionally rather than reflexively, is the more useful outcome. The fly in your kitchen is a decomposer, a pollinator of certain plants that other insects overlook, a food source for the birds and spiders and bats that make the ecosystem surrounding your home function, and one of the most aerodynamically and neurologically sophisticated insects that shares the planet with us. It is also a genuine potential vector for pathogen transfer in the right conditions, and the right response to it is a considered one rather than a panicked one. Keep your prepared food covered, open the window, let it find its way back to the world it is actually built for. And the next time it lands on the counter and lifts off before you can reach it, understand that what you just witnessed was not an insult. It was 330 degrees of visual awareness and 100 milliseconds of threat anticipation, working exactly as evolution designed them to. Have you ever watched a fly closely enough to notice exactly what it was doing, rather than just where it was landing? Tell me about it in the comments. I read every single one, and this is exactly the kind of story this community was built for. And if you want to understand another creature that shares your home in ways you have never quite considered, one that is doing something in the corner of your ceiling that will completely reframe how you think about household insects, the next video is already waiting for you.